All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Aware Athlete Show. As always, we're not concerned just with ribbons and medals and trophies, but with the invisible rewards, the invisible trophies, the things that last a lifetime and the things that really give us satisfaction. And we're concerned with how do you attain those things. And so today we're really pleased and privileged to have with us today Erin Mcleod, who is a two-time Olympian, and she competed in back-to-back Olympians, or excuse me, back-to-back Olympics in 2008 and 2012, and helped her team win a bronze medal in 2012. And also, she has recently been inducted into the Canadian Olympic Hall of Fame, and she is also, let me not forget to mention one thing. She, a coach has mentioned Erin as the best goalkeeper in the world. So, so that gives you an idea.
Nice.
Yeah, that is nice. Yeah, but I'm sure it was well deserved. So, also, Erin is an entrepreneur. She is an artist. I'd like to find out a little bit more about that. And of course, she's still playing soccer. And at 37, she's still kind of at the top of her game, I think. And so the other thing is that we want to really get into today is that she is co-founder of the Mindful Project. And so, Erin, so pleased to have you with us. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah. So let's dive right in. I assume you had a pretty active childhood and you got involved in sports, summer and winter sports from the beginning. How did?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been really lucky. My parents have always been extremely supportive, and they were both great athletes. And I think just wanting their kids to try out everything. So I literally did everything from Highland dancing to Taekwondo to badminton, track and field, and but soccer and basketball I kind of fell in love with almost immediately. But yeah, I was very active as a kid, and for me, I had a moment, an aha moment, watching the 1988 Calgary Olympics, watching Elizabeth Manley skate. And although I'm super horrible on skates, it was the moment where I kind of think I realized the Olympic dream and how awesome that was. And that was a moment where I decided I want to go to the Olympics. I don't know how and what sport. So that was something I was obsessed with quite early. And I think it helped to have parents just supporting me and finding the sport that I loved.
Yeah. So I'm always interested in that when somebody achieves so much, what their support system was like growing up and so on. Your parents were great athletes, you say, and what type of sports did they participate in?
My dad was a big time basketball player and my mom into volleyball. But I think where I've been really, really fortunate is my dad didn't have much of a background in soccer, to be honest, but he was my coach a lot as a young age, which was really nice, of course. And my mom has always been incredibly hardworking and quite the perfectionist. So I think I picked up a lot of traits from both of them.
So you grew up in a little bit of a perfectionist atmosphere then.
Yes, I have two sisters as well who are heavily involved in sport and great students. And yes, I think we set a pretty high bar in the household, but it was also a lot of fun. And I lost you for a second there. You're back. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So if you want to go ahead, and you had two sisters that were also very competitive.
Yeah, I mean, they are both really great students and active in a lot of sports. My older sister did a lot of volleyball and my younger sister a lot of soccer. And I mean, I remember shooting hoops with both of them in the backyard and, trying to kill one another on the basketball court. And so we always had a pretty good level of competition in the house.
So what did your sisters think when you said, I'm going to go to the Olympics?
Um, I mean, I think when I really fell in love with the idea, I was, to be honest, I was pretty small kid and like a little bit overweight, and I got laughed at a lot every time I said I was going to the Olympics. But it didn't really bother me. I think now if you ask my sisters, they could always tell that I've been pretty disciplined and determined, and yeah, I mean, I think in the fifth grade, I put myself on a diet and started running. And, I think I've been pretty blessed, I think, to, again, have a lot of support around me, but just to have such a fire in me when it came to the Olympics.
Yeah. So running, did you enjoy running?
Well, what's funny? I always kind of people can't believe it when I say that I was a midfielder because I'm a goalkeeper, and goalkeepers are always known for not liking to run, but I love running. Yeah, absolutely. I love trail running, and I've been very fortunate to live in the West Coast the last number of years. And yeah, trail running is, there's nothing like it. And I definitely love running, but I've had to change the type of running that I do in order to perform better at my position. So when I retire, oh, there you are again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, when I retire, no, it's okay. When I retire, yeah, I definitely look forward to doing more trail running and more distance running. And but yeah, right now for goalkeeper, I'm essentially like a sprinter. So a lot of my running is shorter intervals. So more anaerobic fitness.
Yeah.
Anaerobic.
Yeah. Now with your trail running, we have rocks and roots and turns and twists and,
Yeah.
very narrow spots and so on. So you have to do a lot of things with your body there. Does that help your goalkeeping, your agility?
Yeah, in the past is why I've loved doing trail running, because not only do you have to be on your toes, but also you just have to be very present in what you're doing. You can't really look up that much. So, and I think, what I love the most about exercise and in, playing goal but even art and so many things is just being in that state of flow, really being present. So anytime I can and be in that state of being, I love it.
Yeah. So you have had a couple of major injuries, and you had an ACL surgery, and it sounds like they used. I've only had one surgery, but sometimes they use cadaver parts and tendons or donor parts. And
Right.
with your ACL surgery, I understand they did some of that, and they took something out of your quadriceps also.
Yeah, so I've actually had 3 ACL surgeries all on the same knee.
Uh,
So the doctor joked on the third one there was nothing left. So so it was actually incredible because in my tibia, obviously that's where they pinned down the new ACL, and because I had ripped that out multiple times, there was a bit of a gaping hole in it. So incredibly enough, they took a sliver of my kneecap that was attached to my quadricep, and they took that sliver of my kneecap and put it in the hole in my tibia, screwed it there, and then used the quadricep as my new ACL. And every time I have a surgery, I'm just more and more blown away by, the medical advancements in science, and it's really unbelievable.
so that caused you to miss the 2016 Olympics.
Yes.
Yes. And tell me about how you describe a time when you had a love-hate relationship with soccer back around 2008.
Yes.
Uh, so tell me about that. How did that start? Why? You said you grew up in a perfectionist family. When in 2008,
Okay.
you said you described yourself as having a love-hate relationship with soccer. Um, how
Yes.
did that start? Did you originally start out loving soccer, and then something happened to change that, or was that a gradual thing? Or you grew up in a family that had a perfectionist attitude, and isn't that a double-edged sword?
Absolutely. I think I was always very passionate about the game. And it's funny, the better and better I got, the more and more became a perfectionist, really. Because, when I was young, I don't remember like caring so much about the mistakes. I just cared more about playing the game. And I remember it, and it was about 2007, the World Cup in China. And 3 days before that tournament started, the number one goalkeeper for Canada got injured, Karina LeBlanc, and I got thrown in. And we didn't do very well as a team, but I personally did. I had a great tournament, and I was still young. And the coach said, I think in time you'll be one of the best keepers in the world. And being the competitive person that I was, I didn't want to be one of. I wanted to be the best, of course. And but I think I never really actually took a moment to think about what that was and what did it mean to be the best. And in my head, being a perfectionist, I thought it meant I just would no longer make any mistakes, which obviously is a recipe for disaster. Mistakes are inevitable and important for learning, crucial for learning. So the more and more I played that year, the more and more that's when kind of like the love-hate relationship really started building, because I still loved what I did, but I was so brutal to myself when I made mistakes. My self-talk was just, it was pretty horrible. And in that tournament in the Olympics, I remember in my head, kind of thinking like, I just wanted a way out. And I actually had pictured myself getting injured a few times. Like I didn't even know how to get out of the situation. I was in such a bad mental space. And then I did get hurt. And it was an interesting time because a lot of people, because, I'm one of those people with soccer is life t-shirts, people were like, you must be devastated. And I remember feeling relieved. And not till a few months into my rehab, looking inwardly and saying, okay, I love this game so much. I work so hard, and just to hate it, there's like this. So that's actually when my whole mindfulness journey began, but also recognizing I had a very fixed mindset, and also recognizing that, research showed being hard on yourself when making mistakes doesn't help you learn any faster. So not only was it brutal, it was just slowing down my learning, and worried about making them. I was never existing in the present moment, which is where we are at our best as human beings, as athletes, as artists. So yeah, it was I think pretty devastating for a while, but then it actually turned out to be, one of the most, I think, important years of my career, because sometimes, as people, you kind of get to change. So in that way, I feel very lucky.
Yeah. So you wrap up that last sentence one more time?
Yeah. So I think whenever you look back at the hardest times in your career, or in anything, I think that's normally kind of, where the gold is and where you learn the most. And I learned that my fixed mindset was not serving me, and it was working against me as far as learning capability. And not only that, my fixation on mistakes and seeing them as bad things kept me out of the present moment. So it was really a defining moment for me in my career.
Yeah. So resilience is really how fast you can bounce back from these mistakes or things that don't go so well, and learning to do that very quickly is a wonderful thing, I think. Anyway, as a kid, you don't think much about being in the present moment usually. Yeah, but you were
I lost
You
you
had the
again.
Olympic dream from a very early age, and you were able to pursue that, and you had a support system there. Talk about the focus that it took to get to the Olympics in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, yeah, the focus. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. As a kid, you don't notice when you're being in the present moment. I think as kids, we more often than not exist in the present moment, and it's not till we start getting older that we start developing these, habits that keep us out of the moment, that increase our stress and anxiety. But I think as a young person, I was always very focused. And that's one thing my mom still comments about, that I just had this like, disciplined, very focused attitude towards not just soccer, but a lot of things. And um, I think as well, like I kind of had this understanding and belief that if I worked harder than everyone else, that I would succeed. And I remember being in the basement hitting a ball against the wall when it was too cold outside to hit it against the fence, and just working on my first touch and my passing, and over and over and over. And I can remember like some days on the patio, and we had a snow influx and training was canceled, and I'm out there skipping rope. And I just found ways to do extra and to do more, and I still believe in that. I'm an older athlete now, so physically I can't do 6 hours of training every day, but I train my brain almost nonstop, whether it's mindfulness, breathing, and meditation, or I'm doing something called Neuro Tracker, which it's basically like focusing on multiple things while keeping my heart rate down. And I review a lot of footage. So you can be really creative, but I think the hard work was always something. Again, I felt very lucky to have that from my parents. My mom took multiple courses when we were growing up. She was a pharmacist, but continued to do a lot of higher education. And I just remember watching her study like crazy. And so I kind of always understood that that's what it took.
Wow. See,
Yeah.
that's it. Not everybody does, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you did used to train 6 hours a day. Now you were in a team sport,
Yeah.
so I could ask you, what did that do to your social life? But then perhaps your team was your social life, and talk about that. How important is your team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's funny, like I've had some teams where I've had really great friends, and then other teams it's kind of more of a job, and my friends are outside of the team. And I mean, I think at the end of the day it's about respecting the people that you work with. But I'm an introvert, so when I show up to training, I give it everything that I've got, and then I go to like a room by myself after training.
Yeah, I
And
understand that very well. Yeah.
yeah, and recharge my battery. And I also know what it takes for success. I've been very lucky to play for Canada, in the sense that we have always really valued team connection, and knowing that's a very important part of success.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I think I've been more willing to connect with people, especially the new people on the team, now that I'm the oldest. But about welcoming people in, and having them feel comfortable, and that's important. But growing up, like I did sacrifice a lot of, I was kind of like the oddball. I didn't really fit in with the jocks, and I didn't really, fit in with the geeks, although I consider myself a geek. But I didn't really have my place, but I always felt like I belonged on sports teams. So it was a sacrifice not to go out and go to the movies and do a lot of stuff. But I think at the end of the day, I was happier being, with like-minded people who enjoyed the sport the way that I did.
Yeah. So as hard as you were on yourself, what was your relationship with some of your coaches, where they'll say, no, I need you to do this or that? Where do you consider yourself to be coachable?
Yes, I maybe this may sound bad, but maybe too coachable. I think as I've gotten older, um, I've started to really recognize my limits. And again, I've always done the extra, but physically, I think it's, been a cause of some of my injuries. So it's knowing when to stop and when not to do extra. And I think when a coach tells me to do something, like I want to get it right now. And I obsess, and I have an obsessive personality, and what I've learned is, as I've gotten older, is I want to be me. The kind of athlete I want to be is me. I have unique characteristics, and I'm not trying to be anyone else. And sometimes that's hard when you're training in a group of three. Normally that's what happens with goalkeepers, and you see someone else do something really well, and you're like, I want to be able to do that. But I think it's about focusing on the things that I want to focus on, and being comfortable with that. So and sometimes listening to what coaches say, and I'm 37, so it's like, if they're teaching me how to do something, and it doesn't work, if I'm not, I'm not 20, and I try to always be open-minded. I believe in having a beginner's mind with everything. But I do think that, if it's not going to make, a couple of percentage shift in my game, then it's sometimes better to put my attention into other things. And that, I think, comes from building trust as well with your coach.
Yeah.
They have to trust that you saying, I'm not going to do that doesn't mean you're disrespecting them. It's not about that. It's about knowing what works best for you. And that's a hard relationship that you have to build over time.
Have you had a lot of coaches and made a lot of transitions, and how long does it sometimes take to build that trust relationship with your coach? Is it sometimes maybe right off the bat, or other times not?
Yeah, I think it's depending on the person. And I've been lucky that I've had, as far as human beings, like quality human beings, always especially as my keeper coaches. And I've been so lucky in that. And to be honest, like that, should it matter? I don't know, but for me it does. And when I know someone is a good person and they have good intentions, for me the trust builds much quicker. And and I think that desire to excel and be better. There's always kind of like, I was just in Iceland, and there's a coach from Serbia, and he told me he's like old school, and running back and forth, and I'm 37, so like I don't need to be doing hard fitness and goal every day. But we started building this communication because that was his style and I had a different style, and we eventually kind of met halfway in the middle. And I think sometimes too it's about giving your coaches credit too, because it's a vulnerable thing saying like, this doesn't work for me, and you don't know how they're going to receive it. Like, oh, she doesn't want to be the best, or she, you know what I mean? So it's it's like anything, any relationship, it's like about communication and being just open and honest, and being clear, I think, on intentions is a must for me.
Yeah. So you just mentioned here, you're an older athlete now. We'll ask a couple questions about that.
Sure.
Obviously that influences your relationship with coaches. When you're a brand new athlete, you're 19, 20 years old, you're pretty much just going to say, well, I better just listen to everything they do. Maybe is that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as you get older, something changes. So can you talk about your relationship with your coaches changing as you get older? You just did actually pretty well sum that up, I think.
Yeah, well, I think you just kind of, you feel more comfortable being real. I think, when I was 19 years old, I had a coach say, I put weights on my back and run up a sand hill, and I wouldn't have questioned it. I wouldn't have, and like, I've always believed in working hard, but I think now it's also hard for me because I always want to do extra, but, I have to say, I can't do any more today, and I might need tomorrow off. And I think the coaches that work with me also understand that's hard for me. So if I'm saying that, they kind of don't push it. But I also feel really grateful that I have coaches now that know my personality and that I always want more. And they all say, okay, Erin, you're done, and so that's important.
So that's one aspect. There's maybe more than one, but that's one aspect of confidence is having all that experience. It really,
Yeah.
and so taking that a little bit farther, uh, rather than just relating to the coaches, but how does all this experience and this age and what is now in your mind about the game, how does that help you be a better athlete? Or how does that help you, how does that help you be a better athlete?
Yeah, I mean, I think um, I my focuses have just changed. You know, I think as you get older, you recognize that the people that you work with is what makes the experience. And um, for me now, empowering those around me, I know that focusing and serving others helps your happiness level. Period. So, I mean, I don't think it's self-serving, but I think it's everyone feels good when we're all working to get the best out of one another. But I also know, you know, I'm familiar with my relationship with stress, and that we have a physiological, like two very different reactions if we think that nerves is bad or if we think it's good. And if we think it's good, our arteries like stay more expanded, and we're more relaxed when we go and play, and the blood flow to our brain and our muscles is better. And in those kind of senses, like if I'm nervous on a game day, I'm at the place in my career where I'm like, okay, I'm just getting ready, you know. Whereas 19 years old, I was like, oh my God, I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, I'm, you know. And I think I'm comfortable with the mind I have. I feel blessed to have an obsessive personality, but I also, I think, have practiced just knowing when to let my thoughts be in charge and when to kind of let them pass by. And I feel lucky that I have ways to just get into the moment. And it's funny, as soon as I get on the field, I feel like I'm home. You
Yeah,
know, I get on the pitch and I'm like, it's a familiar place, the smells, like everything. It's just like, I feel that's where I belong. And all the stuff that I'm feeling before the game kind of fades away. And I know that's going to happen now. So there's that comfort, I guess, as well.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
uh, do you now see the field better and anticipate what's going on a little bit better than you used to, or?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny what they say about experience, you know, like when you get older, you read the game better, and it's true. And I also think it's about being more relaxed and, you know, seeing the field better. And, you know, one of my mindfulness techniques is expanding my vision and seeing all the way to the left and the right. I mean, that has a calming effect on your brain. And coincidentally, it also helps you see the field better, you know. And it's because I practice mindfulness more often, I feel so much better in the games, and that the zone is like more accessible to me. And even the days where I have a really busy mind and it happens, it's like I'm able to still breathe. I've got my anchors. And then even though some days I'm fighting my mind the whole time, I'm still able to be present and to enjoy it and still see the game. So that I feel has taken a lot of work, but I feel very fortunate for that.
Yeah. So you mentioned stress there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, actually, there's a huge difference between everything being effortful, everything feeling hard, everything feeling
Yeah.
tense, and
Yes.
and just doing. And you,
Yeah.
not only from your story, but so much I've observed, and even in myself, if we aim to do
Yes.
something the most efficiently, we're actually aiming to do it the easiest way there is. Uh, in other words, we're not fighting ourselves. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Totally.
And so
Yeah.
going
I mean, I think, yeah, sorry.
going back to health and anxiety, going back to 2008,
Yes.
you already had that wonderful focus that brought you to the Olympics, but something else was
Yeah.
going on there, and we always uh, we're going to have to acknowledge that life is hard sometimes, but we have a way
Absolutely.
that we can make it harder for ourselves. In other words,
Yes.
about half of our problems we cause them ourselves, and so at that time there
Oh,
you were
totally.
actually in that love
At
hate.
least, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so someone
Sorry,
just
I lost.
recently said, said something about
Right.
peace. Everybody's seeking peace. And they said, this person was saying, okay, we're sitting by this peaceful pond here. I throw a rock into the pond, now you're not peaceful. Now there's ripples. And he said, you can control about 50-60% of your life. He said, the other 40% you don't like. And in other words, we do create, stress creates a lot of our own difficulties. So you found yourself at that spot there, and you were even thinking about injury, and then you got injured. And so there's a couple ways that stress could contribute to injury. And you said you were relieved actually to sit out for a while. And
Yeah,
sometimes something in us almost demands that we quit. We're not there.
totally.
And
Yeah.
so could you comment on how our psychological state, probably in more than one way, can contribute to injury or, harming ourselves that way? What's the harm in being so anxious all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, I think if I look back actually at all my injuries, I don't think it was a coincidence I got hurt. And in the sense that, I was going through a really hard time after the 2016 Olympics. During the Olympics, actually, it was one of the hardest times of my life because in the qualifying tournament, I tore my ACL, played the rest of the tournament. We qualified, the team went, and I didn't go. And I just remember I let the game define me, really. And when I didn't go, I felt like I had lost everything. I lost who I was, and I went through a really, really hard time. And I think as a result, out of nowhere, I got tarsal tunnel syndrome in both my feet. And literally, I was almost unable to walk for half a year. And it was my mental state, 100%. It was my mental health. And as soon as, I started putting more time into myself and just focusing on good things and focusing on the fact that it was much more than just an athlete. I became a better sister. I became a better friend. I was starting to build confidence from everywhere and working on my life balance. And, I slowly got better. My health got better. My injuries went away. And for sure, I think the mind is so incredibly powerful. And another epiphany that I had in 2008 was I wanted a way out, and my brain figured out a way, and so I think, it is incredibly powerful.
I actually can identify with that. There was a time in my life when I was very, I guess you'd say, depressed.
Yeah.
I was so unhappy with my situation that
Yeah.
I really didn't get severely injured at that time, but I kind of chronic, things, injuries.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I almost needed them to be there to give me a break. I know that might seem strange to
Yeah.
someone who hasn't had that experience, but what I don't want to see too strange to our listeners is that anxiety has a terrific effect on our lives. And I don't think it really goes away, but you took that terrific mental focus that you had to get where you were, and you learned a new kind of focus.
Yeah.
You're calling mindfulness. And it was, would you say it was a focus? Tell me how that was different from the focus you had before. Let's get into that. How was that focus different from the focus that got you to the Olympics in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, again, like I said, when you're young, I think you don't really notice how often that you're in the present moment, and you kind of like learn, I think you pick up habits that don't serve you, mental habits. But as far as like my focus, I could sit down and do something for like 45 minutes without like looking up or doing anything else. And I was similar in my training. And to be honest, I think I think, and I always say this, you know, I was my true self at 5 years old. And I think you kind of go through everything and then you find your way back to that. And I think that I kind of just got in my own way. Like we talked about, I became a perfectionist and I became very outcome focused, and I was only as good as my last game. And it was like, that's all that really mattered. And what I have realized, or maybe unlearned, you know, is, you know, stop going from, you know, thinking about the future and dwelling on past mistakes. How do I get back to my laser focus, right now, right here? And I think I kind of had to shift back to that, and also just be more process oriented. You know, like I'm at my best when, you know, a cross is coming into the game and I'm focusing on the spin of the ball. That's all I focus on. Or if I'm going to go kick a ball, I look at one spot on the ball. Or if there's a free kick coming and I take a breath, you know, and these things, maybe I did them as, you know, a 10-year-old. I wouldn't be surprised, but you know, I think I just had to kind of go through the cycle of, you know, my getting caught up with my ego essentially, and then trying my best to get rid of it, and just going back to, I think, you know, just being a young kid, focusing 100% of my attention into something.
Yeah. So that intense focus you had was even more intense when you bring mindfulness into it, because it doesn't have all that distraction of, you said, your ego and your anxiety and things like that. So it's even a better focus, but it's a happier, gentler focus also.
Right.
So that's I think that's a wonderful thing that you're able to give back right now. You know, something I admire, and I also would like to do a little bit more of that. But I think awareness, mindfulness, is actually that state where you begin to know how to give back. Okay,
That's okay.
that mindfulness. I want people to,
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
really hear this part of your story. That mindfulness involves more self-love, more self-acceptance. It involves less anxiety, because the anxiety is not what you're focused on at the moment. Less ego. And I think it really opens you up to being able to be a person who gives back in the world. It's a shift in mindset that is really so much more satisfying. What would you say, Ken?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I think in general, I've always been really hard on myself, and the self-love piece, I think, is essential, because even though research shows that being hard on ourselves doesn't improve our learning curve, what people don't realize, or what I have experienced now, is we rarely have been, you know, trying your best on a test or studying or all these things, just getting out and doing. Like, it takes a lot of willpower and motivation and all these things, and we rarely give ourselves the acknowledgement of that. It almost becomes this expectation, you know, and we could all be bumps on a log, you know, like, so I think at the end of the day, that's, for me anyway, where it starts. You start acknowledging, like, you know, you're exhausted after a day because you did, and that was awesome. And it might not feel authentic at first, but I always try to, and one of my sports psych said this to me when I was, a couple of years ago. You know, they said, picture a 5-year-old version of yourself on the couch, and imagine talking to yourself that way throughout the day. And it immediately shifted from me being like harsh and negative to just still being honest, but being caring, and being sincere, and yeah, just being kind. And I think it's funny when people are expected to love other people without loving themselves first. It seems
It's not possible.
Doesn't make sense. Almost.
No, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. So
yeah.
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 All right. So even your body moves more efficiently, more better in an improved manner, faster if you're not tied up in knots. Um, but so let me ask you something I don't know much about. Is tell us about your art.
Like we talked about before, art, I was obsessed with art from a very young age, around 5, and I was obsessed with Wayne Gretzky and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I was drawing all the time, but art has always been an escape for me. It's one of the very few things that I can do aside from sport where my mind is clear and I'm in this state of flow and expression. And so I've always, I love like the more traditional artists like Michelangelo and Da Vinci, and but I also love street art. Newer artists like Shepard Fairey and Banksy, and I attempt to kind of blend them. But really, at the end of the day, for me, it's the experience. I've gotten into a lot of tattoo designing, which is cool also because I get to why they're getting the tattoo. So in a lot of ways, it's been very, unexpectedly rewarding.
Cool. Now, could you tell us, with all this talk about intense focus, how do you incorporate rest, and how do you be non-focused when you need to?
Yes.
Actually, being non-focused, relaxed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've actually gotten into the habit of trying to go for a walk every day. I'm in quarantine, so now it's quite funny. I'm doing laps around the house, but and I basically, I go for a walk and I focus on my breathing and whatever thoughts I have. I call it often my idea walk, because I just, whatever happens, whatever. It's a kind of a moment where I let go. And I've done a lot of research on being an efficient learner, and actually being in that state is great because your brain, kind of repackages information and process a lot of things that you may have just learned or some stuff that you have just done. So focused periods where you just kind of let everything go, and I do that every day. Yeah.
So being in nature is just great for that. Because you don't have to think about why the tree is there. It's just there for you. The sky is there. The ground is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
how much sleep do you get?
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of merit in just connecting with nature. I think it's powerful.
Yeah, I think it is too. It's our original habitat. So how much sleep do you get?
About 8 hours every night.
And that does it for you.
I'm trying to actually shift to get her and wake up earlier. I find that I'm most productive in the mornings, so I try to wake up every day and get my training in pretty early, and then
a little bit farther here. So, Erin, I really want you to tell us about the Mindful Project.
Yeah, so the Mindful Project started years ago. I was actually playing soccer in Germany in the Bundesliga, and this woman, Rachel, and her husband, Jamie, were traveling. They're both university soccer coaches, and they were in Europe getting ideas, different training ideas to bring home English. So we went for dinner and we kind of got to talking about mindfulness. She was at that time getting her doctorate in mindfulness research, and I had started applying mindfulness in my sport. And yeah, so as I was saying, I met Dr. Rachel Linval so her and her husband were kind of doing scouting in Europe to get ideas for their university in the town that I was training at in Germany, Jena. And they asked if I wanted to go for dinner and have a chat. And, I was not making very much money, and free dinner sounded like a good deal. So we got to chatting, and she told me a little bit about her research, and it was incredible because I had been applying mindfulness for a few years at that point, and we kind of shared back and forth, and then we talked about story, and we found as early as 3.5 years old. So we initially started to build a young program for young athletes catered towards 8 or 12 years old, self-talk and self-compassion and how they view mistakes and these kind of things. So we started with a sports program, but for young people, but more recently we created the high performance program, which we're really proud of, mostly because we're both very passionate about high performance sport, but also just high performance in general. I think it's kind of a state of being. One of my goalkeepers once said to other parts of your life. And so I took that to heart. And it's been a lot of work, but it's also been so rewarding in a sense that we're always trying to think of ways that are going to help athletes. We have a breathing series that's coming up, and just learning more about ourselves and how we can connect to the moment. And it's been a really cool journey so far.
So a lot of young athletes would say, I don't need breathing exercises. Maybe. But because of what you've learned and your story and how it's helped you, I think that's what really, what's the term? I don't want to say sells it to young people, but lets them understand how valuable mindfulness is. I think it's, it comes right out of your own experience and your own story. And so, yeah, you're the living example, really. And go ahead.
Yeah. And well, the cool thing I think about athletes as well as, you get to apply, and that's why I love sport, because you can apply all these things that you're learning to sport, and it's just a vehicle. These athletes apply it to sport, but then they start kind of realizing, I get stressed before a test, or I get stressed before a presentation, and the breathing tools that I use to calm me before a game, it's the same thing. You can use it everywhere in life, and being present, having a conversation. There's nothing worse when you're having a conversation with someone and you can tell they're everywhere else but right there, and so it's more fulfilling for your relationships. You're more patient and calm, and it is everywhere in life, not just sport.
Yeah. Well, I think that's 100% accurate. I think that sports actually is a metaphor for life, because it's you can teach things from it so clearly because it has these set rules and a set arena and so on. But it's just life. It's life because people go through such intense pressure in various situations. Yeah. And so it's just valuable for everyone in the world.
Yeah.
And it's something kids just don't get this in school, that we don't teach them how to take care of themselves, take care of their inner life, how to focus even. And
right.
And well, how to, go ahead. Yeah. So I want to, mindfulness is just really the secret to a better, less stressful life for everyone. And
yes,
it's you can't say enough about it. It's the world's greatest need, really, more self-awareness. And nobody, unless you apply yourself for more self-awareness, more mindfulness, practice these things, you'll never know just how wonderfully valuable it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Erin, I just want to thank you. This conversation is full of gems. I appreciate you sharing your story. It's so valuable, and it's been delightful. I've really enjoyed it.